Hello, Caroline. So, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to another wonderful podcast of Visible Bruises. So, today we have a special guest, and he's actually the host also, and our specialist in this field. So, Caroline Harley Bell. She's like a brain spotting practitioner, somatic trauma informant. She does so many things to help people. So we would be honored and we would like to welcome Caroline Harley-Bell. So Caroline, uh, what are you going to teach us today?
Oh wow, yes. Thank you so much, Yogi. I could First of all, let's start off with a breathing technique. As you say, just feeling your feet on the floor and just noticing that, just maybe pushing your feet, alternating that, and then just noticing your legs and maybe touching your knees, just feeling your body and feeling your thighs and your bottom in the seat and allowing your body to move and feeling your back in the chair and rolling your shoulders and being like, oh wow, I've got hands, giving them a little bit of movement, attachment and, and attention, and just rolling our neck and to just noticing our head and noticing all of the muscles in our face and noticing our neck and noticing our chest and our belly, and just maybe if you wanted to put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly and just noticing your breath as it comes in and out. Not looking to control it in any way, but just noticing it as it is. There's no right or wrong in any of that. Amazing. Thank you, Yogi Sanjivana. There
Thank
you
you
go.
so
I've got my words back in now, grounded. Amazing. As you say, sometimes that's all it needs to just to be able to down-regulate our nervous system, to just bring our awareness back to within our body and noticing our breath. As you say, today again, we're going to be looking at the behaviours of the victim, the person that's receiving the trauma. Quite often, we would term that as a codependent person. So again, even though the narcissistic or abusive person has got maladaptive behavioural patterns, they're attracted to the victim because they have those mirror opposite of the behavioural patterns. And so when we're looking to self-discover ourselves, we need to find out where those weaknesses are, those behaviors that in the moment were absolutely okay. That was what your nervous system felt like was the best thing to do. But as you say, if that behavior is then stuck into your subconscious, even though you're out of the trauma perhaps, then if there's a trigger that reminds you of what happened, your behavior, your subconscious will still flip you into that maladaptive response because that was what worked then,
much.
and it's okay. So again, just giving yourself that permission to just be like, I didn't know what I know now, and that's okay. But now that I know, I can choose to do it differently. And today we're just going to be looking to be a little bit more optimistic with regards to just understanding those behavior patterns that potentially we might have shame and blame around for our own selves as the person that received the trauma, you know because quite often our own inner critic is our worst enemy as in those regards, more so than potentially anything that anyone else externally could say.
Mhm.
So so first of all, again, as you say, just giving ourselves the opportunity and permission to say, if anything here comes up that feels too overwhelming for you, stop and contact your local emergency services and reach out for support near you. Okay, there's lots and lots of great agencies and establishments all around the world now that help with suicidal ideation and escaping from abusive partners. So look for that. I encourage you to be proactive with that and to search for it. Here in the UK, we also have some like legislation that entitles a victim to find out about potential histories of a potential partner. It's called Claire's Law for domestic abuse, and also it's called Sarah's Law for potentially child assault and abuse for a person. So you're here, we're entitled to that. Again, I appreciate that not everywhere has the same legal system, but just so that if people are aware, they can maybe look for it. Brilliant.
So,
So yeah, you say
so they can
those heavy things.
check on a partner and see like their history, just in case.
Yeah, we have a legal right to disclose that information here in England. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But again, it's not a foolproof system, because ultimately, it's only if a person has been prosecuted and it's in the
Uh,
legal legislation. Sometimes if people don't report it, then the next person doesn't know. And so that's why it's also very important, in my mind, to do what you can to go down that legal route, to actually report it to the right authorities as well, so that not only can you protect yourself, you can protect the next person moving forward, and ultimately as well protect the person that's the abuser, because sometimes they don't know what they're doing, perhaps, in potentially, that it's maladaptive and abusive, and the only way that we can help them is by getting it legislated, so that then they can seek the right sort of help
mhm,
moving forward, because we're looking for a society that's compassionately aware.
mhm,
So, because quite often in my studies, what I've learned is that a person that has maladaptive and negative abuse traits, they've been probably learned, and they've also probably been abused themselves in their childhood, which is why you get that connection initially. An abuser quite often will tell you their traumas in their past, so that as a codependent person, you look to try and be a rescuer or a saver, and you can find quite a lot of alliances with those people. If
mhm,
you feel like you've come from a similar sort of background, but ultimately, you know as we said, an abusive person is looking to inflict pain to create a power imbalance,
mhm,
whereas a person that's codependent will see another person's pain and understand that with a deep experiential empathy,
mhm,
and be like, I know how horrible that was, I want to help you move forward. So, and again, so let's start off with initially looking at what sort of attachment styles people's personalities have. I mean, ultimately, if we all lived in a harmonious society, as individuals, we'd be looking to have a secure attachment style with things and with people, because you can have attachment to things and houses and places, and as well as people. So a secure attachment style would be low on avoidance, low on anxiety, and comfortable with intimacy, and not worried about a rejection or preoccupied with relationships, and say that, it's easy for me to get close with other people, and I'm comfortable depending on them, and I am comfortable depending on myself as well, and I don't worry about being abandoned or someone getting too close to me. Yeah, so that would be kind of like a secure, attachment style. And then next, you have people that have got an anxious attachment style.
mhm,
So these are the people that are low on avoidance, but they're high on anxiety. So they crave closeness and intimacy. They're very insecure about the relationship, and always like, I want to be extremely emotionally close and merge effectively with the others, as they're reluctant as and merge with others, as they're reluctant, although they would be reluctant to get close to them. And then they would just, and people with anxious anxiety attachment would often worry that their partner doesn't love or value them, and they're worried about being abandoned, and and they're and also quite often people like that, their intimacy attachment style will scare people away, because it feels very, very needy, so it's like, oh,
mhm.
it's a bit like, but
Too
it's
much.
because, as you say, that they feel very like, they feel unworthy as a sole person, so they need to attach on to people. And then, the third attachment style would be avoidant. So these people, as you say, would be high in isolating themselves, but they're low on anxiety. They're not, like, as you say, like clingy. They actually feel uncomfortable with closeness, and they primarily value independence and freedom. So those are their, like, values in that. And then they'd be saying, I feel uncomfortable being too close to others. I find it difficult to trust and depend on other people. And I prefer that others do not depend on me also. And it's very important that I feel independent and self-sufficient. And when my partners want to be more intimate with me, that makes me feel uncomfortable. Yeah. So does that make sense? Like what an avoidant person would be
Sure,
like,
sure.
just like anybody. It's like, oh, if you, I'm so totally self-sufficient that I don't need anybody. It's rejection as well, people. And then you have the fourth style, which would be disorganized. So these people are highly avoidant, but also highly anxious.
Oh.
So that's a very complicated sort of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
They're uncomfortable with intimacy, but also worried about their partner's commitments to them and love. And it's they find it difficult to trust people, but they also heavily depend on them, and they worry about getting hurt if they're not close to their partner. So it's just and what I want to also add here is that you can have different attachment styles to different things and different people. It's not a one size fits all in all areas. Okay. So, and just giving yourself the opportunity to just sort of let some of that information sink in, and just thinking about yourself in your day-to-day activities and what you maybe are anxiously attached to, maybe what you're avoidantly attached to, maybe if you've got some disorganized attachment around something. I know I have disorganized attachment around money. uh, Again, and then maybe also just considering here as well what you feel like you're securely attached to as well, because I'm sure that everybody has some kind of secure attachments with certain people or certain places and certain items as well. So yeah, so that's attachment theory. How have you got any questions around that, Yogi?
So these people don't do this is their natural state, right? These four kinds of people, this is their natural state, right?
Yeah, these would be just like an attack, the way that everybody potentially attaches to things. Ultimately, as we said, we want people to be able to be in a secure attachment to everything around them, and with to themselves as well, importantly. But maybe if you're not feeling secure, maybe as we said already, if you've been through abuse and you're rejecting parts, or you don't understand how some of that behavior's negatively affected you, and so you might have like an avoidant uh, attachment to yourself, or a disorganized attachment in that as well.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay, brilliant.
Okay.
And so moving into where am I? So moving into what potentially behaviors that might come up as a person that's codependent, the person that was receiving the trauma. Um, Quite a lot of these behaviors you'll notice are actually very similar to what the abuser potentially would inflict, but it's about just accepting that those have been in your behavioral army per se, because our subconscious tries all different ways to be able to move you into the next second, get you away from danger. So if your nervous system, as we say, is the traffic lights of tolerance, like, so if
Mm-hmm.
you're in ventral vagal, in calm rest and digest in your nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be insecure. And then if you're in a high activity, you're in your fight and flight, more kind of activated, or if you're in a dorsal vagal, then you're more in freeze. And so there's certain behaviors that you'll display more in that sympathetic kind of fight or flight, and then there's certain behaviors that you'll display more if you're in the dorsal vagal, more kind of fawning, people pleasing kind of behaviors, where it's just like, I've had too much, I need to just give away because I can't deal with fighting it. So, and then potentially also, if you're in a situation where you're being sexually assaulted as well, or otherwise assaulted, you say if it's not safe to fight and it's not safe to run, then your body will put you into that flop state where you pretend like you're dead. Like, our nervous system will do that. It's called a catatonic freeze response. Apparently 70% of people that actually experience a catatonic freeze are like, if they're being assaulted or attacked in any way. So, and it can be quite self-trust breaking if you don't understand how your nervous system has completely just shut you down. Like that
Yeah.
logical part of you is like, why didn't I do this, why didn't I do that? And that's that shame and blame. And so and so uh, so but just at the end of the day, when your nervous system is looking to protect you so that you can survive, and that's okay, right? So codependent traits potentially, like, so in relationally would be people pleasing and always seeking approval, be a peacekeeper, a caretaker, potentially be manipulative and project as well, They could also potentially be quite controlling. Again, if they had more of an anxious attachment, it would be more controlling. They'd have a lack of boundaries. Everything sort of seems okay because it's that people pleasing, like, and that low self-worth as well. So that it's like say yes to everything. Um, Potentially be dismissive. You can also call this like a toxic positivity if you're in that as well. It's like, oh, but that's okay because that's okay, that's because this. Bad behavior is okay because of, like, they'll be always just over excusing things. They could also be highly jealous as well, again with that anxious, and also promiscuous. Okay, now promiscuity is a very interesting kind of like behavioral defense mechanism, because you're looking for lots of different sources of people to be validating your existence, and if someone wants you intimately, then that must mean that you are worth something. But again, as we said, when there's like lack of boundaries, they don't really realize how much they're hurting themselves as well as the other people potentially around them. And so again, with a codependent trait, um, behaviorally, they could be perfectionist, and again have that deep inner critic. They could also be an emotional eater, like, just like, even though they're not hungry, because they're trying to soothe themselves away from thinking about traumas, they're just overeating. Again, I think we may have mentioned in the past as well, when your mind is in that deep freeze and it's using about 60% of your daily energy to be able to heal, whereas a healthy mind would be using about 25% of your daily energy. So it's this kind of like, I need to just keep eating because I'm constantly having the thoughts kind of like giving me cognitive dissonance, and my brain is constantly having to over rewire itself. So because of the nature of the abuse coming in, it's giving you that word salad and confusion, and it's just always trying to heal that. Potentially also a codependent might be an overspender as well. Like, especially if you're being financially abused, if you already spend out all of your money, and that yes thing is like, oh, I'm worthy because I can buy you these things, it makes you want to need me, but not have financial boundaries in that, spend until deficit. They could also have a victim mentality as well. It's that woe is me, kind of like nothing ever goes right for me. And that's okay. Ultimately, you can only know what your experience has been moving forward. They could also potentially have like a social media, like scrolling habit as well, just like constantly avoiding life. Again, that would be more of an avoidance, sort of like just completely distract away. They could be a high achiever, again, at that looking like I've got to be a worthy person, but especially if it's avoidant, like that sort of, as we said, self-independent, high achieving, I can do everything myself, don't need it. So, and that would be also coming in with planner. Potentially also a codependent might experience self-harm behavioral patterns as well. Quite often self-harm is a release of pain. If your emotional pain is very, very high, if you give yourself a physical pain, that's an actual real tangible distraction, so as to not deal with it. Addiction, similarly to self-harm, those kind of like extreme avoidance kind of behaviors. Procrastination is a very interesting one. Again, if your brain is overworking to try to fix everything and actually slowly try to future cast, you can't really future cast very well if you're actually in healing, because that's where you're focusing on just today. So although we do often quite get a lot of blame and shame around, oh, I haven't been able to do it today, but that's okay. It's a defense mechanism to say, I need you to slow down. Your body's saying, I need you to slow down and stop bracing through the next thing, because we are looking to heal what's already happened, you know. And also obsessive compulsive disorder. This would be also kind of, being so hyper controlling and hyper vigilant that everything has to be all in the right place. Because if you can control all of the other things in your life, at least when the abuse comes in and blows everything else up in that area, these all feel like they're secure, like they have, as we've said, like you can be attached to items and places as well. So there's that behavioral coping mechanism, and like something has to be in order in my world. Even though from the outside, as somebody looking in, it can seem maladaptive, but when you're considering that person has that trait, it makes sense to them, and that's okay, because we're all individual and unique, right?
Sure.
Okay, so any questions with regards to
No,
that?
no. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. um so again, like, so another trait of codependent people, like when they're in that activation, when they're kind of in that more the fight or flight state, you know, they potentially display quite a lot of anger, because again, if you're always validating your own boundaries and not giving yourself the worth or the respect that you deserve as a person, like sleep, eat, like, you know, self-care, and then when someone else comes and puts another stress on you, quite often anger can be a reactive defense mechanism to just effectively say, that's too much for me. But again, you know, it has negative connotations in societal life, you know. So and then again, they could also be quite insecure and a lot of shame. Now, when you see a person that's in shame, often they won't give very much eye contact. They'll look at the floor, and you'll also see them sort of hunch. You know, it's just sort of like that kind of like small, they trying to diminish themselves when a person's in shame. So you can like look and you can see a person, their body language with regards to that. They can also be quite impulsive. Again, say like that's that when we're looking at our nervous system and its addiction to cortisol and stress and adrenaline and also like feel good hormones as well, like just trying to get up and down, like because essentially the maladaptive is your nervous system being out of rhythm, and so that impulsiveness will be like, oh, I just need a quick fix of the high right now. You know, again, as we said, it can lead to financial instability, or again like it sexual promiscuous kind of like, oh, it's just a high right now, I don't know why I did it, I just did it, like there's no real thought going into it, it's just my nervous system is too high in cortisol, so I'll just try and do something to give me some of the high happiness hormones. um so they can also be quite childlike as well. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of internal family systems by Dr. Robert Schwartz, but where where he says that quite a lot of like trauma and these codependent behaviors often start with childhood trauma and other issues in childhood. And so the concept behind that is that these behaviors become apparent and are learned by your subconscious as a child, and so they're actually protecting that age of you. So if it was like you were 6 and there was that trauma and you hadn't suddenly had to have a behavioral part come in and blend with that part because it wasn't safe in those moments, so when you then are triggered, you're actually going back to regressing into that 6-year-old behavior, which is why you seem quite childlike. And obviously, if you're very heavily blended with a lot of childhood behavioral patterns, people can seem very childlike, you know, look needing to be cared for and that like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very clear.
Yeah. Okay. And then they can also get quite a lot of what's termed as like imposter syndrome as well. Um, so imposter essentially, as you say, if you're pretending to be somebody else because it doesn't feel safe to be who you are, you know, and so and they can also be when they're activated, like choose to be alone, like so again that avoidant behavior, and but ultimately as well we have to appreciate that like isolating yourself quite often does lead to a depressive state, and so they can often quite have like depression and look to get medication because because you're isolating yourself, you have nobody to co-regulate with, or and often they don't know how to self-regulate because they haven't been taught how to do it because it wasn't safe. And as children, we know that we have to co-regulate our emotions with our caregivers and our parents. But ultimately, if you haven't had that with your caregivers, you don't know how to do it. So you're always seeking to find that. But if you can't cope co-regulate your own nervous system to be able, because it's high and spiky. Again, with that breathing technique that we did at the beginning, that would be a down regulating tool that you can use. But people, if you don't know how it's working or why it's good for you, you're not going to do it, because if again, as we said, if you don't know, you can't know. And so and also when you're in a sympathetic state, you can also get quite a lot of like pain. Again, as we said, with the self-harm, like physically, internally, your body will also look to kind of give you different pains to help support and move you away from those other things that we feel like are heavier. And also defensiveness, always that, like, it's not me, that, like, potentially like blaming other people as well. So it's so, as we said, like, there's quite a lot of these traits that potentially could sound like an abusive, but it's just we're on the scale of maladaptiveness. So so again, just looking to give yourself compassion in that. It's okay that your nervous system is ultimately just doing the best it can to try and help you to move forward. So and then also, like, we could also have like the cognitive kind of like behavioral traits would be like a self-hate. Like that, always, like, as we said before, your experiences have always been maladaptive, and they've always had often quite a negative impact, and so it's like that self-worthlessness, and so we get like an internal monologue of self-hate. And they can also be like hypersensitive to things, sort of with that anxiousness. It's kind of like, what do you mean, like um and if you just try and give them a compliment or something, they can be like, oh, I don't know what, like, they don't take it or receive it well, because maybe potentially that's been manipulated in the past, a compliment. And then, so we have to be appreciative of where those have come from. Again, paranoid. And it's absolutely fair that a person that has been assaulted would be paranoid. That's that, like, a protective boundary that subconsciously we're trying to put in to keep us safe. But again, from society, it's like, oh, you're worried about that again, worried about that again. I do also want to just put in the caveat here that, like, females are twice as sort of hypervigilant and paranoid about environment, just generally, because of the nature of reproduction. We're twice, females are twice as likely to be paranoid than males anyway, because we have just different things going on. So, and then they can also have like quite a lot of remorse as well, like, and that remorse and guilt can go into, being more people pleasing, like, especially if you feel like you have done wrong, and then you have to, like, try 10 times as hard to make it right. And highly judgmental as well. I mean, obviously, if you've got a higher self inner critic anyway, and you're holding yourself to a lot of pointers, and you're going to sort of just project that onto other people as well. But also quite often a lack of insight as well. So it's quite often sort of, as we said, like, if they're blended with a childish part or a younger part, that they don't really necessarily have a lot of, like, the ability to kind of be rational with things. So, and then over responsibility, again, with that regards to that kind of concept of, if you need me, you have to, like, if I make you need me, then you have to have me around and look after me and support me. So they'll take on that, yes, that people pleasing, that always are going to give out to everyone because I need to be needed, that feeling. Yeah. So if you got any questions with regards to any of those?
So, like you said, these situations can change, right? Like when you mentioned, like, ups and downs. So,
Yeah.
so these patterns, Caroline, it can, like, though we talk about specifics, in a single person also, can they shift from time to time or situation to situation? Possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I do a self-navigation mapping kind of exercise in my VIP with my VIP clients, where we like specifically look at over 50 different kinds of behaviors and just
Mhm.
sort of like give our subconscious the opportunity to say yes, sometimes no. Have I ever had that, or have I had it in the past? And looking to see which behavioral patterns are more supportive of your personality right now, and also what have maybe potentially you've done in the past but have just grown out of, because they will shuffle and shift themselves.
Mhm.
But ultimately you can talk with your behavior. It's a really curious kind of thing when you give yourself the opportunity to be in self leadership and that self compassion, and look to be the self leader of your life. And you can talk with those parts, and you can ask them, how long have you been supporting me for? And they'll tell you how old they think you are. It's an amazing experience to
Mhm.
kind of go, oh, well, that's how long that best friend of mine has been. Because ultimately, all of these behaviors, they are looking to out for your best interest in the perspective that they understand, with
Mhm.
those triggers and traumas and all of those points of activation in your past that they've come up to try and protect you from feeling that worthiness wound, or that I'm not enough wound, or when that wound that's going to put your nervous system into dysregulation.
Mhm.
So that's ultimately that's how that system's working. But and it's fair as well that that software, although it was written as you were a child and it needed to be that way when you were experiencing that, it's okay as well that as an adult it might not be the software that we need to operate in today. And so we do have the ability with our neuroceptions and our plasticity in our mind to create new behavioral patterns,
Mhm.
moving forward, to have that expansion, to be able to find that happiness and be able to downregulate and co-regulate ourselves. And so what we're looking for ultimately is an interdependence rather than an independence or a codependence. That would
Mhm.
be the state, that would be the state where we feel most secure, where we appreciate, as you said, that other people are helping us, but we don't overextend, and where we have that healthier balance. Yeah.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
we have that natural natural ability to like bring it up. Like say we had some particular kind of mentality when we were small, and then we have that natural ability within us to bring
Mm.
it up.
Ultimately, we are such creative and beautiful, amazing machines, in that we have the ability, our prefrontal cortex has the ability to self-scan. We can, as we did there with that breathing exercise earlier,
Mhm.
we self-scanned and noticed all of our body. You can do that self-scan again and notice all of the pains in it, and like getting into that deeper self-connection. And
Mhm.
then we can also self-scan with regards to those behavioral patterns as well. Like, so when we're just giving ourselves the opportunity to simply notice what we're noticing, there's no right or wrong in it.
Mhm.
Those parts in us, those behaviors, we can invoke them and bring them up and feel them centrally within our body, and feel where they are stored within our body, those pockets of trauma that create reactions.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and then we can disperse them. Yeah, like as you said, like I used the brain spotting with regards to that, but ultimately there's many different ways that we can connect into those subconscious personalities and speak with them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and then ultimately, as you say, you're giving yourself the opportunity to process and timestamp it back into your hippocampus. Okay, because the trauma, it's not been processed and timestamped into your subconscious memory. It's kept active as a response. So, but as I said, if it's not something that you're currently experiencing now, you can timestamp it into the past. Oh, conversely, though, if it is something that you are still experiencing right now, it's okay that it's active for you. It's doing its best it can, to keep you safe and alive in this moment,
Mhm.
so. And that's for me, that's been how I've been able to reconnect
Mhm.
self-trust and reconnect to myself from avoidance and codependency. It's giving those behaviors self-compassion and releasing the shame and blame from my own self, because ultimately nobody else can heal us. The only person that can heal us is ourselves. Sometimes, yeah, okay, we can look for, a little bit of advice and guidance along the way, but like as we said before, when you go to the doctor with a broken leg, all they do is cast you up and tell you to like not move until the bone heals itself. And
Yeah.
these are the same things with emotional and psychological trauma and pain as well. You know, it's about giving them the right environment to be able to heal, and not constantly ripping the band-aid off of which ultimately would have, when you're looking to heal, that's what an abuser does, is constantly ripping the band-aid off of what you're trying to heal,
Mm-hmm.
um re-rupturing the wounds. So,
Uh,
but yeah.
so, Caroline, today is a busy day for you. Do you have some more time, or like how is it for you?
Yeah, I've got probably about 10 more minutes. Have you got
Ah,
another
okay,
question?
okay. Yeah, yeah. Just so like because of this abuse, what happens is like our that natural how to say quality or the ability, it is disrupt like exactly like you mean like a broken bone or something, right? Because usually like it's not, and it has the capacity to grow and strengthen and everything, but sudden fall or something can break it, no? So
Yeah,
that's the place we need like professional help, or like all this a circle of help in that sense to come back to our natural process, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You should say, like, all of these traits that we've mentioned, like, for instance, overeating, it's just a maladaptive response, but we need to eat. There's nothing wrong with eating. And so it's just come out a little bit. So it's about giving that part compassion, and figuring out what it's trying to distract us from, and healing that distraction, so that then the overeating part will just naturally come back into a more evenly balanced
Mm,
behavior. Again, like with as we said, like, I mean, and ultimately as well, like, there might be parts like planner, it can still be a strength, if, as long as it's not like to the point where you're obsessive about it.
mm,
It's a good skill to have. It's a good quality to have, to be able to plan, you
mm,
know and even with regards to like jealousy,
mm,
everyone has jealousy to an extent, right? It's understanding that the quality of jealousy is that it's a motivational kind of challenge, right? It's like, oh, I desire that myself in order to better myself,
mm,
and not that I want to take it from you. I just want to be able to create it for myself. So
mm,
it's about seeing the adaptive quality of in the maladaptiveness,
mm,
because no parts are bad, no behaviors are really bad. It's just, as you said, it's if they tip out of the scale of being within those parameters of being in ventral vagal, in that green state, like where you're in calmness, rest and digest. And again, if you're noticing what you're noticing, there's so many different amazing parts of all of us, that creative bouquet of how we're made up. And when you give it the opportunity to just kind of compassionately go, okay, I feel like I'm feeling jealous in this moment.
mhm,
Why is that? And asking yourself that question, rather than blending with the part and as you say, getting or into that more sympathetic.
mm,
This is how we can downregulate ourselves, because just noticing where you're feeling it in your body, and noticing what it is that it's trying to tell you. There's something, essentially. I feel like these behaviors, they're always just checking your six. Our prefrontal cortex can only look through one lens at a time.
mhm,
Hopefully it's looking through creative abundance, looking for opportunity, but ultimately, if you're only looking through one lens, there's still the
mm,
359 other lenses
mhm,
potentially that life is throwing at you. As we said before, our subconscious is tracking 11 million bits of information per second,
mhm,
and it's in our body wants to be able to tell us, well, check in with this, check in with that, just make sure that you're safe, and that's okay.
mhm,
And so yeah, so when you have the ability to kind of bring those maladaptive uh, behaviors back into being supportive, and as you said, have that conversation with them,
mhm.
it's actually really awe-inspiring, and you just kind of go, dude, people are so awesome. Like, we're so great, you know it's really, really inspiring. And again, as you say, I love being able to speak with people and help them to see those parts. Like, I've had a client one time, and she said, I always get this really horrible pain in my knuckles. And so we spoke with that part, and it was a case that part, it was actually a self-love. It was like, I'm squeezing your hand when you're getting that inner self-critic, kind of like demoralizing yourself and telling yourself you're shocking at everything and can't do anything and not worthy of anything. I'm just squeezing your hand to say, give yourself some self-love. But I have to really squeeze it, because ultimately the only way our body communicates with itself is through pain, is through sensation.
Oh,
You know,
sensation. Mm-hmm.
it like, that's how we are, physical,
Mm-hmm.
touchy, tactile creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way we could, like, and through smells and things, and like, and I was speaking with another lady the other night, and she was speaking about how through COVID she actually lost her sense of smell. And
Oh,
she was like, and it really discombobulated her, because she was like, I was burning toast and I couldn't smell it. Like, I could have burnt my house down, and I was like really worried. And
oh.
ultimately, again, our bodies, they are systems, they are mechanisms, and in order to repair it, sometimes it has to go offline, and that's okay.
Mm.
But hopefully, it repairs itself, always constantly trying to fix itself. you know so, and just by giving it the right sort of time frame, normally we will fix ourselves once we've healed. We're very, very clever little machines, really. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
it's just
So thank you so much,
person, just
Caroline.
a little hug. A little hug. You're really, really awesome, really.
They
And I
say
just
about
stop.
it, self hugs even, no?
Yeah, no, it
Uh,
is. Like, we all have that inner child as well. We've all got those three states of ourselves, like our past state, our current state, and our future state as well. And so it's nice sometimes to be just like, I've been every single second of myself all the time, and I've made the best choices that I could have, knowing what I knew at the time.
mhm,
And so I appreciate all of those different choice points, because
mm,
if I hadn't, I wouldn't be me, right? Um, and it's just nice sometimes to just give that inner child and all of those past selves just a hug, because
mhm,
this body has brought you here, and that's okay. That's pretty epic, really. Of all of the things that have
mhm.
happened to us, it's
Sure.
pretty epic that you're here. So it's just nice sometimes to just, I thought I'd just hug myself, and visually consider, like, hugging that inner child of mine, those younger parts of mine, because we do deserve to love ourselves.
Sure, sure.
We are worthy, and we are enough, just for
Mhm,
being us, just for breathing. Those inhales and exhales, we complement the trees. That we're the balance to the carbon monoxide and oxygen that the trees create. Like, it is enough just to breathe. That's okay.
yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, so thank you so
Thank you.
much, Caroline, and thank you for sharing all your all this wisdom, experiences, and it's a great thing, and your valuable time with us. So, and I really hope, and we will trying like to reach more and more people with this. So, and yeah, we are so grateful for you for sharing all this, and we wish you a wonderful day, and hopefully
Yeah,
we have more and more sessions, or like how to say, like your sharing of wisdom with us. So thank you so much again, and have a beautiful day. And
you
we
too.
will definitely put all Caroline's information and everything in the post as well as the video, so anybody can contact her. And these are wonderful topics, and many people can have very good use out of these things. So, okay then. Uh,
Thank you
every,
so much, Sandy. I appreciate you. And thank you so much for giving me the gift of the platform to be able to speak with people and speak with you, and
Mhm,
share the wisdom and knowledge, and just, as you say, that self-connectedness. And again, if anything came up for anybody, hopefully, I
mhm,
giving you the opportunity to simply notice what you're noticing,
mhm.
and that's okay. And giving that conversation and that self-compassion that we all deserve. Yeah. And again, if anything was triggering, reach out to your local support systems and networks. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. Have a great
Okay, thank
week and good
you.
luck.
Okay, see you
Thank you.
soon.
Bye.
Thank you so much.